Hi, everyone, and I want to thank you for joining me today. My name is Karolina, and today we will be exploring the human side of quality and why people don't follow the processes you've spent time and energy to design. Because most of us, if not everyone, have been in the situation where we invest time, energy, and money into designing compliance systems and then we watch people bypass them on the shop floor. This webinar is not about adding more rules. It's about exploring why this happened and how we can fix it. Today, we are going to unpack exactly how to bridge the gap between people and processes. We will look at the compliance illusion, why good people create informal workarounds just to survive the shifts. We will uncover the hidden risks that fear and pressure introduce into your systems. We will look at why the retrain the operator kappa loop is a trap that guarantees repeat deviations. And finally, I will look at this topic through the pop lens so you can walk away with a practical strategy to build true process ownership. Before we deep dive into this topic, let me share why I'm so passionate about that. I'm the founder of Quality Chakra Consulting, and I didn't learn about quality culture from a textbook. I lived it on the manufacturing floor. I was standing right there during the end of month shipping crunch. I was watching the friction between hitting production targets and maintaining rigid regulatory standards. That lived experience taught me one fundamental truth that quality doesn't live in your SOP manuals, it lives in human behavior. And that's why I developed the POP lens to bridge the massive gap between paperwork compliance and the real action on the floor. I recently conducted a poll on LinkedIn to ask quality professionals what are the default reaction to deviations. Looking at these numbers, we can see that 46% default corrective action is retrain operator and 15% head straight for the SOP to add more pages. That gives us 61% across industries focusing on the person or the paperwork. Only 31% are looking at the systemic environment. And yes, there are still few of us which are just crossing the fingers and hoping it won't happen again. Before we move on, we need to ask ourselves why this is happening. And I'm gonna tell you why. It's happening because it feels like work. Retraining an operator or rewriting procedure is visible, it's easy to document, and it allows you to tick the box for the auditors. It gives you the illusion that you've solved the problem. But when process breaks down or when the operator skips the step, what is the very first question organizations usually ask? They ask, who did this? And the common unspoken assumption is often they just don't care. We chalk it up to lack of discipline or laziness or a bad attitude. But in my years working with teams on the shop floor, I found that this assumption is almost always completely wrong. On the other hand, the management default response is people just won't follow the procedures. Followed immediately by we need to roll out more training or they should know better by now. So we open deviation, we check the box, and we default to retraining cycle. But let me ask you a question. Is lack of training really the problem? Did the operator actually forget how to do the job? Or is something else going on? Here is the big perspective shift for today. Human error is a symptom, not a root cause. Most quality failures are not technical issues, they are behavioral issues driven by system friction. When people deviate from a process, it is usually an adaptive response to fear, unmanaged delivery pressure, a lack of process clarity, or lack of feeling the ownership over the tool they are using. So let's dig deeper into what I call the compliance illusion. This is that dangerous state where your paperwork looks perfect, your SOP are signed off, and your audit trail is immaculate. But on the actual shop floor, the reality is completely different. When procedures are disconnected from how the work is actually performed, employees didn't ignore the rules to be difficult. They ignored them to actually be productive. They develop informal workarounds, tribal knowledge, and cheat sheets just to bridge the gap between your unrealistic requirements and the practical reality of their shift. As leaders, we see the clean paperwork and we assume we have control, while the reality is that the control we think we have is nothing more than an illusion. A common reaction when we realize people aren't following the rules is to audit harder. We add more checklists, more frequent reviews, and more oversight. But here is the hard truth. You cannot fix systemic friction with more auditing. Auditing only measures a gap, it doesn't close it. To stop these repeat deviations, we have to look at the three hidden forces that are actually shaping human behavior on the shop floor. Is fear, pressure, and the disconnected reality of our processes. If you ignore these drivers, you aren't managing quality. You're just managing the symptoms. Let's talk about fear first. Fear is one of the greatest hidden quality risks in any organization. When people fear blame or consequences or simply being the person who slowed production down, they stop raising their hands. They stop reporting near misses. Silence hides systemic risk until it explodes into a massive deviation that you can no longer ignore. The second driver is pressure. Under intense pressure to ship or meet a deadline, human behavior changes. Speed naturally starts to win over standards, and informal shortcuts appear. I'm sure you've heard leaders saying compliance is number one, but if their tone change under pressure when batch is delayed, the team hears the real message. The third driver is that our procedures often completely ignore operational reality. When your SOP contains 60 pages of complex theoretical text disconnected from how the work actually happens, operators are forced to adapt. They create informal cheat sheets and workarounds just to hit the targets. This creates a dangerous compliance illusion where the paperwork looks flawless to an auditor but doesn't reflect what actually happened on the floor. When we ignore these behavioral drivers, we get trapped in a vicious cycle. Repeated deviations, endless firefighting, workarounds, and late stage problem discoveries that cost thousands to fix. Worse, it creates a bitter us versus them friction between the quality team and operations team. So I want to say this clearly. People are not the problem. Your operators are not trying to sabotage the product. The problem is that your system is not being experienced by them in the right way. They are trying to succeed within a flawed environment. Human behavior is a direct reaction to that environment. If you want to change the behavior on the shop floor, you cannot just rewrite the SOP or lecture the operator. You have to change the environment. That means changing leadership's response to error, improving clear cross-functional communication, building trust, and creating process clarity. Because your true quality standard is not what is written in your SOP. It is the lowest behavior leadership is willing to tolerate under pressure. So, what does the real shift actually look like? It's moving away from the assumption that the operator is the problem. We need to stop viewing the shop floor through the lens of lack of discipline. Instead, the real shift is recognizing that human behavior is a direct, logical reaction to the environment we have built. If you want to change the behavior, you must change the environment. This means moving from culture of enforcement to a culture of support. It means leadership showing up not to catch people doing something wrong, but to understand what is making the job harder to do right. How do we bridge this gap from massive checkbox compliance to active, engaged ownership? It starts by acknowledging that operators are the expert in the process. We need to invite them into the design of these systems. Active ownership happens when operator feels that the procedure is a tool for them and not tool against them. It's about building a feedback loop where when someone hits a snag or finds a better way to work safely, they feel empowered to bring it to us rather than hiding this. When we shift our role from being process police to being process partners, we stop fighting against our teams and start working alongside them. This is exactly why I encourage to look at the problem through the POP lens, to give you a structured way to fix that environment and stop the lazy retrain the operator loop. First is P4 paperwork realism. We must stop writing overly complex administrative burdens and start designing human centric, usable processes. To give you a real world example, I recently took a core quality manual and completely overhauled it. I managed to cut the reading time down from 52 minutes to just 13 minutes. And we didn't lose compliance. We just stripped away the bureaucratic fat so the employees could actually absorb the standards. Second is O for operational ownership. We have to get quality out of the back office and onto the manufacturing floor. We achieve this by replacing distant, paperwork only auditing with structured, purposeful Gemba walks. But it must go deeper, just a formal walk. Go out on the line, stay and watch how the line is actually running. Observe where the operator struggles to follow the procedure and what breaks down when the line stops. Ask them how it feels to follow the process and replace auditing the line with a simple human conversation. When you practice trust through presence, you build a bridge between quality and operations. Operators start taking ownership of the system because they see that management actually cares about this physical reality of their shift. Third is P for psychological safety. If your team is terrified of making mistake, they will hide the data, cover up the near misses, and create silent non-compliance. We must shift from blame-based auditing to curiosity-driven system improvements. How do we do this in practice? We change how we investigate deviations. A kappa meeting shouldn't be a courtroom interrogation to find who to blame. It should be a problem-solving session to find what broke. We ask questions like, what information did the operator have at that exact moment? Or what part of the environment made this mistake easy to make? When you protect your people from blame, they will reward you with the transparency you need to actually fix the system. So the next time a deviation lands on your desk or a process fail on the line, I challenge you to break the old corporate habit. Don't ask who did this. Ask why the system allowed it to happen. Shift your focus from blame to curiosity. Fixing the paperwork versus action gap doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with a conversation. If you are ready to move your organization from passive compliance to active ownership, let's connect. Whether it's through a targeted workshop for your leadership team, coaching, or just a discovery strategic conversation, I'm here to help you build a culture where quality actually thrives. Thank you so much for your time today, and I really hope you enjoy the session.